This is Louise Gartner with Spectrum Commodities, taking a look at the wheat markets for Monday, November 1st. Well, we made it through October in pretty decent shape across the grain, most of the grain space, and especially wheat, where we were up $1.40 on the Minneapolis, leading the charge higher for this bullish market in the wheat space. Kansas City was up 54 on the month. Chicago was up 47. Corn up 31, and almost all of that was last week. Soybeans actually lost 20 cents on the month after being up 18 for the week. And for the week in wheat, Kansas City was up 12, Minneapolis up 39, Chicago up 11. So contributing quite a bit to the big month. But nevertheless, it's been quite a streak in the wheat market, led obviously by Minneapolis, which was up triple over what the winter wheats were. And even for last week, up about triple. So it just continues its tear to the upside, hardly seeing any correction at all, even though winter wheats would stage a pullback even on Friday as the markets kind of pulled back just slightly in the winter wheats. Minneapolis was up 15. So pretty much in a universe all its own, not finding anyone willing to step up and sell this market. And understandably, there aren't any substitutes for spring wheat, and there's very little of that around. And you're not going to find it in Canada, and Canada's not going to find it here in the US. So we're going to see trade reduce for spring wheat, but just because of the massive drought across the northern plains and Canadian prairies, there just isn't that much around. So I thought we'd see a bit more of a pullback in wheat. I thought we would stall out around this time window, in particular as the Southern Hemisphere harvest really kicks into high gear. Both major wheat producers of Argentina and Australia are looking at sizable crops. And we're starting to see some Australian presence in the export market. And their prices have not really rallied at all, despite the big run up in the U.S. markets. For the world cash price last week, we saw U.S. soft red winter wheat at the Gulf up $15 a ton at 342 on a FOB offer. That's up 40 cents on the week. Hard red winter wheat was up $3 a ton at 356. In Ukraine, they were up $6 a ton on a FOB offer at 320. Russia was up 5 at 326. France up 5 at 333. Argentina was down 3 at 290. So we are starting to see some of that pressure coming in from the southern hemisphere countries. We've got the Russian export tax basically unchanged this week. The government decided to leave it alone, but they did prop it up for next week. They've already announced what the tax will be. For wheat, it's at $69.90. That is up $2.90 from last week. Corn at $50.10 was up 40 cents a ton, and barley at $54.80, that's up $2.20 a ton. And I think it's worth noting again that one of the private estimates out of Russia, ICAR, is increasing their wheat production estimate for Russia up about, they're sitting at 75 to 75.5 million tons. That's up about 3 million tons over where USDA has them most recently. So we're starting to see some of the estimates ratchet up somewhat for Russia. We've seen the Russian exporters become more aggressive, especially as the year is winding down. They are trying to get as much moved out as possible before the government imposes some tariff rate quotas after the start of the year. So they're trying to avoid that. They've already got an onerous tax on them. But that tax, while it's just increased steadily over the last couple months, has basically raised world price because world prices are moving higher. The US has moved higher. Russia is still capturing a fair amount of business with their higher prices. So all the world prices are moving higher. Except Russia, or except Australia and Argentina, they've slowly ratcheted higher, but we're starting to see them become pretty aggressive with their harvest moving on and their wheat coming into the world pipeline. Some interesting news this morning. Egypt is back in the market. They were in the market last week. They bought a pretty good chunk of wheat, 360,000 tons, all from the Black Sea at $328 FOB. Now they're back in again. So they were behind on their purchases because they canceled the tender about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Then they came in and had to pay higher money for what they bought last week. and it looks like they're going to get bumped up again. The lowest offer this morning so far is Russia at 332, and that is up $4 over what they paid last week. So interesting dynamics there, but I think they're a bit of a scramble to get some wheat bought. It's expected that Australia is probably going to put out some offers here. They're kind of just getting back in the market, but we'll see if they do, and if so, where they compare to Russia. It would be pretty interesting to see if they would capture some of that business. They used to be one of the primary providers of wheat to Egypt back in the day before Russia became such a dominant player. Also, with Australia in the news, the Saudi Arabian Grain Organization, they put out a tender last week for about 500,000 tons of wheat. They actually bought double that. They bought 1.26 million tons of wheat at 377. That is CIF, and it equates to about $335 FOB. But that's still significantly higher than their last purchase from September 13th at around 356, which is up $21 on a CIF basis. It's presumed that Australia was a big supplier for that purchase, which makes sense logistically, but it also underscores that they are back in the market in a big way. If they're going to capture, a big chunk of that business, that's quite a bit for one sale, and also the talk that they might be tendering or might be putting out some offers for the Egyptian tender. So the wheat market, I think, obviously this upward trajectory is not slowing down. We've got the markets are higher on the night session. We're right back at the Chicago wheat contract highs. So that's worth noting that the market there is pushing strongly. Probably would find some resistance at that August high, but we'll see. Minneapolis, of course, didn't really slow down at the August high. They just kept going, and that was 3 weeks ago. So we're still pushing higher in Minneapolis, still leading the way, up 15 on the night session, where Chicago's up 9. Kansas City is up 6. So we put in a new contract high here last week in Kansas City. The market basically has just traded sideways since then. We haven't continued that upward momentum. So, the market's not backing off. It's just not really leading the way or continuing to push higher. But nevertheless, the buyers seem to still be there on the pullbacks. Again, I thought we would have more of a correction here as we head into this time window with Argentina and Australia getting back into the world export market. And it still might, but I think it just again, underscores the underlying support that the wheat market has, that Minneapolis really has no competition at all, and that the buyers are going to be there on the brakes. So even if we do pause, even if we do get a bit of a pullback, market takes a breather, gets some profit taking or whatever, we're in a very strong upward bull market, and I don't think that that's going to change at least through the winter, and at least until we see what kind of weather we get in the northern hemisphere, and that's months away. And at least for spring wheat, you've got to buy some acres, or at least protect your acreage base. And there's going to be a great deal of competition for those acres coming from corn, soybeans, barley, oats, canola, you name it. Anything they grow in North Dakota, which is a lot of stuff, it's going to be competing and across the Canadian prairies as well. So I don't see Minneapolis really backing off. I look for some significant highs to be established in early May, which is a normal seasonal time window as you wrap up your planting season and decisions are made by then, and we get a good look at what the winter wheat growing season is like. We'll pretty much know by then what our winter wheat crop is in the southern and central plains. So there's still a lot to go, I think, in this market. I do think we're due for a breather here, but in the bigger picture, we're still very well intact with this bull market in wheat. If you have any questions, feel free to call at 1-800-888-9843. This has been Louise Gartner with Spectrum Commodities.